Don't mind the wind, there's nothing I can do about it anyway. The Picture of Dorian Gray, the story about a vain young man who traded his soul for youth and beauty. That is the story in a nutshell. So right at the start, we're introduced to Basil, a painter, and to his friend Lord Henry. And Lord Henry, let me just interject here and say that he is my favorite character because his dialogue is so witty and clever and fun. So I may not agree with any of his morals or any of the things that he says, but anytime you have the conversation, it's just a fun time. But anyway, we are introduced to Basil and Lord Henry, who are friends. Basil is a painter, and he tells Lord Henry of this young man that has completely captivated him by his beauty. And that, of course, is Dorian Gray. And in the second chapter, so still no spoilers, we do meet Dorian Gray, and Basil does another portrait of him, and it is his greatest work, and it's beautiful, and he says, this is more real than Dorian Gray. And that kind of sparks the entire story through some conversation that Dorian has with Lord Henry, and through the praise of Basil, he trades his soul for youth and beauty and wishes that he could stay forever beautiful and that the picture would be the one to grow old. And it is from this wish that we get the tragedy of Dorian Gray. There's something about this novel that is very much like The Great Gatsby. It's very Gatsby-esque in somewhat the setting. It is higher society with parties and rich life and rich speak. But also the characters, I think, reminded me of The Great Gatsby because all of them are incredibly immoral and have almost nothing good that could be said about them, but they are all somehow charming in their own way. And even though they themselves are unpleasant, corrupted characters, the story is not unpleasant to read. I am glad to have finally read this classic, but I don't know that I'll be rushing back to it anytime soon. My favorite part, honestly, was Lord Henry's dialogue. So I could read his dialogue forever, but I know that Oscar Wilde has written other good books with good dialogue, one being The Importance of Being Earnest. I do love that one, so I would sooner reread The Importance of Being Earnest than reread The Picture of Dorian Gray, just because it really is so tragic. And there's also a lot in it that I feel is unnecessary. There was one chapter in particular where Oscar Wilde just went on and on about all the things that Dorian Gray has been doing throughout the years, which could be interesting, except it would be like he had this one hobby, and then Oscar Wilde would tell us everything about that hobby and all the influences and just so much information, just like a huge info dump for a paragraph that spans at least half a page, maybe a whole page or more. And then immediately the next paragraph is, and then he tired of that hobby and picked up this one. And then we go through all of that. And then he tired of this and got interested in this thing. And it was just an entire chapter of info dumping that we didn't even need. So definitely could have done with less of that. But overall, I think it was a good story. I gave it, I think, 4 stars on Goodreads. Again, not something I'm going to rush to pick up. It's a little bit too tragic. And the ending, it had the ending that it needed to have. It wasn't really a surprise. I kind of figured that a certain character was going to have to come back in and that Dorian's life was going to have to go a certain way. Try not to spoil anything, but you kind of know what has to happen in the end somehow. And it did. So I think it was a very satisfactory ending, but it wasn't like a surprising, mind-blowing ending. I did find myself highlighting a little bit more than I expected to. While Oscar Wilde is no Fitzgerald, he did still have some beautiful lines in here that I had to mark. And some of the philosophies of Lord Henry, while they were incredibly wrong or immoral or whatever, I still felt that they were worth noting because they were cleverly phrased or something, an interesting thought to ruminate on further. But this is just a little review for a little book. I really don't have much else to say without giving things away. Definitely interesting, definitely glad to have read it. Love some of the characters, and that's about all. If you like classics and you like literature of this era, I do recommend The Picture of Dorian Gray. It's definitely good for its time period, and I enjoy an old classic like this every once in a while. They're quite fun. I especially just love the language in them. So it was fun for those reasons, and I didn't know very much about the plot, so it was fun to read it going in almost blind and just not really knowing what all to expect until the ending. So it's worth the read, but again, not high on my list to reread. Well, if you like this review, don't forget to like and subscribe down below. I post videos generally every Friday, and I'm starting to post twice a week every once in a while, so if you don't want to miss out on random other videos, then go ahead and subscribe down below. And let me know what you're currently reading. How did your January reading go? Actually, by the time this is posted, it might be more like March. I have quite the backlog of videos, so just let me know how your reading is going and how your winter is going. Hopefully it will be spring soon, and I will not have to deal with the howling wind or the freezing temperatures. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.